next speaker is Hal Downs, and Hal is somebody who is very, very special to me. Hal and I have done some things in the past. I can tell you that when I go to testify somewhere, if I'm by myself, it can take me months, it can take me maybe a year. It didn't Frankenmove to finally achieve victory. But if I go someplace like we did in Howell, Michigan, the very same issue that I was fighting in Frankenmuth, and when the theist and the atheist stand together, it's a completely different world. You cannot imagine. Hal and I resolved our issues in 2 hours when we stood side by side. It's pretty remarkable. I'm a member of the Americans United for Separation of State and Church, headed by Reverend Barry Lynn, which I said a little earlier. Those of us, how many of you are members of the Secular Coalition? Oh, cool, that's excellent. I sometimes say that it's a sectarian organization, but I don't think that's true, because I know that there are lots and lots of secular folks in it. The thing that amazes me about this organization, though, is that when this organization began, it was called Presbyterians for Separation of State and Church. Am I right, Hal? Protestants for Separation of State and Church. And you know that was in the 1940s? Long before atheism, long before the mother of atheism, Madalyn Murray O'Hair brought atheism to America. There was already a sectarian organization out there trying to file lawsuits and defending separation of state and church. I've always found that to be pretty amazing. It evolved to become the Americans United for Separation of State and Church. And so if you want to subscribe to a monthly little, does anybody have their magazine with them? Separation, that is just page after page of lawsuits that are happening. If you want to know what's going on in America in terms of lawsuits, separation of state and church issues, you got to subscribe to this magazine. It's breathtaking. I can hardly wait till it arrives. Now, Hal has been the president of the Michigan chapter of Americans United for Separation of State and Church for, I think, better than 10 years, Hal. And he has done so much here in Michigan in terms of fighting the Bible-centered school textbook classes. Oh boy, and that's going to, I think we're not going to have to worry about that anymore. They're just going to close their public schools, turn them all into charter schools, and they'll go ahead and teach the Bible. And he's worked with the national, worked with me. This is part of what we've done with the National Council on Bible Curriculum in Public Schools. That's a program that has the strong underpinnings of David Barton. Who knows David Barton? A historical revisionist. Should be a permanent guest on Fox. Has no clue what the facts and the truth are. And then, as you can imagine, Hal has been busy dealing with the foot bath issue in Michigan. You know about that, right? Oh, yeah, well, see, we have to put foot baths in our airport and all of our universities. Any place else, Hal?
So far, that's it.
Oh, because, you know, people have to wash their feet before they pray. So that's already done. Those foot baths are already in there, and there they are. And so we were screaming and wailing about it, but that it is. So if you have dirty feet when you get at the airport, you want to freshen up, you can go in the restroom and wash your feet. We put those in for the cab drivers, actually, who were worshipers of Allah. Hal was born and raised right here in Detroit, and he's a graduate of Redford High School, Central Michigan University, and the University of Michigan. Bravo, Hal. He's now a retired teacher. and his wife, Barbara. They have 5 children, and one of the activities that he's involved in is volunteering at the Detroit Institute of Arts. Please save our paintings. Okay.
Do my best.
He enjoys reading, writing plays, and travel. So, what Hal is going to do today is give us an overview of the case of the town versus Greece.
Town of Greece.
Huh?
The town of Greece.
Town of Greece versus Galloway. How many of you are aware of it? Oh, cool. All right. Well, it's noted as a supreme adventure, and he's going to discuss a really important thing with us. The evolving definition of the phrase or the concept regarding religious freedom. What is religious freedom? Hal Downs.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Arlene. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to speak with the atheists and to do projects with the atheists. And she's right. We are effective when we work together. There's no question about it, far more than we are independently. Yeah, for the past 10 years I've been very busy. Although I have to admit that the minute Obama got elected, the amount of workload on my shoulders diminished because I think the religious right was more concerned about a black guy being president than anything else. So they tended to calm down a bit, but frankly I think that's just simply the lull before the storm. I really do. Louder? Okay, the lull before the storm. They've taken this time, by the way, the religious right, to amass huge amounts of money. They're better funded today than I think they've been funded ever. Okay? This is in spite of the fact that the New Republic and other liberal publications declared them dead. They are not dead. They are there, they're rich, they're fat, and they're ready to go. And frankly, I think that the case I'm going to talk about today, the town of Greece versus Galloway, may turn out to be that catalyst for them to get back into the world again, depending on how the court, of course, rules. Okay? All right, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of it. The case is the town of Greece versus Galloway. The Supreme Court heard it on November 6th, 2013. This is hot news here. What's at stake? Well, for decades, the Supreme Court has made it clear that the government cannot endorse or favor a particular religious view. Okay, that's a given. The town of Greece has asked that the court move away from this precedent by permitting the board to continue its sectarian Christian prayer before every monthly meeting. The result would be that the government bodies would have a blank check to pray in a whole community's name with language drawn from a particular faith. All right, we're not talking here about the status quo, which was based on a ruling called Marsh in 1983. This is something new. They want to take it to a whole new level. Such a decision would also impact other areas of law regarding religion in the public sphere because it would essentially allow the government to endorse Christianity above all faiths. That's a serious piece of business right there. It would also mean, as AU's brief pointed out, that the anti-gay, military, funeral, picketing Westboro Baptist Church would be free to open government meetings by denouncing homosexuality as a sin against God. Similarly, the brief continued by saying nothing would preclude the Dearborn City Council from opening its meetings with a steady stream of imams who lead participants in Quranic recitation. This would be completely legit, without question. While other cities could open meetings with Catholic Mass or evangelical prayer or, I don't know, maybe there's a predominance of Wiccans in a community, who knows. But they'd be able to do this. Effectively, there'd be no limit at all on what government could do or how far it could go to align itself with a particular faith. This, of course, would divide the country and send a clear message to other faiths or to those who chose to practice no religion that they are not welcome in this nation. George Washington, I normally don't like to quote the founding fathers, but this one was quite good. He said in 1792, Religious controversies are always productive of more acrimony and irreconcilable hatreds than those that spring from any other cause. This is why, if the town of Greece is successful, there's going to be a whole boatload of hate floating around. No doubt. And could be a very divisive situation. All right, before we get in there, let's get some terms. I'm going to define some terms for us that are relevant to this case. The first one is sectarian prayer. Sectarian prayer. Basically what this is a one-sided communication, usually verbal, between a human being and a specific mystical presence or deity. The communication usually involves thanking the deity for services rendered, asking the deity to render a service, or statements concerning the power and majesty of the deity. Okay? We all know a sectarian prayer when we hear it. There's no question about that. Okay? They're pretty evident, pretty obvious. I've gone to plenty of common council meetings, city council meetings, as Arlene has. And whenever they start using phrases, well, the name of Jesus Christ, or whenever they use phrases like sanctified in the blood of the Lamb, or whatever the case is, we're dealing with, clearly, a sectarian prayer. Now, the next one is the non-sectarian prayer. This is also a one-sided communication, usually verbal, between a human being and a generic mystical presence or deity. Just generic, okay? Has no name at all other than God. In the United States, the generic deity is the God referred to on our money and in the Pledge of Allegiance. See, the Supreme Court has ruled a long time ago that they can use the name God on our money and on courthouse walls and that kind of thing because, frankly, it's for purely ceremonial purposes only. He's a ceremonial deity. He really doesn't mean anything anymore. He's a piece of history, tradition, okay? True believers find that appalling, but the government came up with this in order to, well, create I think, their own religion called ceremonial deism, but that's another issue altogether, okay? It's an interesting concept. Now, there's another definition of this too. Or for non-believers, such as yourselves, the phrase non-sectarian prayers is a true oxymoron. You can't have, if you're praying to somebody, some mystical being, whether he's generic or not, it's still a religious act. So this concept of non-sectarian prayers is extremely problematic, and this is part of the case. This is what the court is wrestling with right now. It was actually a name of a Supreme Court case that will be alluded to is Marsh v. Chambers in 1983. The court upheld in 1983 in Marsh that the practice of starting legislative sessions with an invocation based on an unambiguous and unbroken history of legislative prayer dating back to the first Congress in 1792. However, the court, so in other words, you can't pray in front of legislative sessions because we've always done it. However, the court also ruled that such prayers are unconstitutional only if the selection of prayer givers stems from a permissible motive, i.e. the prayer givers are representative of the entire faith community and are chosen in a fair and balanced way. So in other words, you can have all the legislative prayers you want in the world as long as the people giving the prayers are somehow representative of the community at large. By that they mean you've got some Protestants, you've got some Catholics, you've got some rabbis, you've got some Wiccans, you've got, whatever, okay, that are represented. And also, due to some court cases, non-believers as well. Okay, they would be included in this mix if they were so inclined to want to introduce a legislative session. Okay? Also, the prayer that these guys give cannot be used to advance any one religion. I don't know how that could be done. Okay, but that's what it says. They can't go out there to try to advance it. The government can't help them do it, and so on. And last, the prayer may not be used to disparage any other faith or belief. So you can't go up there and say atheists are nasty people and they're destined for hell. Okay, you can't do that, all right? Or can you? I don't know. If you're in the town of Greece, you probably can. These conditions of Marsh are extremely permissive. meaning there's a lot of wiggle room in there, okay? And that's what's caused some problems. Also, too, it's important to note that the court did not apply the test from Lemon v. Kurtzman. This is the other big church-state ruling of recent years. They did not. They completely ignored it, and they created their own new precedent here, which did nothing but muddy the waters even further. All right. Now, Lemon v. Kurtzman, simply put, the thing that came out of that of most significance was the Lemon test itself. The Lemon test is a test that defines whether a law, a practice, a policy, etc., is constitutional. It's a three-pronged test. It was introduced by Justice O'Connor, and I think the minute she did, she regretted it. Matter of fact, in her book, she implied that that was not her brightest hour, shining hour on the court. A Lemon test is simply this. One, a law must have a secular legislative purpose. Okay, if it has a spiritual legislative purpose, you can't do it. It wouldn't pass the Lemon test. This, of course, has created lots of problems. Okay, we all know that most of the opposition to the abortion question is based on religion, religious beliefs of people. All right? Therefore, they want to outlaw abortion for religious reasons. Is that a secular purpose or not? I don't know. But it's opened the door to a great many controversies. Again, very permissive. The second prong of the test is the law, in its principle or primary effect, must neither advance or inhibit religion. Okay? And last, the law must not foster excessive entanglement of church and state. Some entanglement, that's okay. All right? Little bit of entanglement, but no, not excessive. And again, every time I read that, I can't help but think like a little pregnant, you know. She's a little dead, you know, that kind of thing. It's clearly, without question, that is the worst possible ruling. Excessive. How do you define it? I mean, how do you define it? The court basically says things like, I know it when I see it. It's like when they were judging pornography. Oh, I know when it's excessive. I can feel it. I can see it. That's excessive. But they cannot define it on paper, or they refuse to, frankly. All right? Now, the Lemon test is profoundly disliked by nearly everyone, including the court, okay, and the lower judges. But it's still there, and it still serves as a precedent for many, many cases. All right, so there we're at. The last term we want to talk about is religious freedom. This is relevant because this new definition of religious freedom, it was invoked during the hearing, okay? It was discussed during the hearing by one of the judges, as a matter of fact, and it's therefore relevant to us. Basically, religious freedom is the right of all Americans to practice their religion or no religion without governmental interference. It's as simple as that. There's nothing more to it than that. Okay? You can be an atheist, and that's okay. The government will never tell you you can't be. And if there are any laws in the books that say you can't be an atheist or your rights are somehow restricted because you're an atheist, those laws or policies would be considered unconstitutional, and there you go. By the way, did they get rid of the atheists can't serve on the juries in Vermont law? Did they get rid of that? I'm going to look up into that because they were talking about it a few years ago. There was a statute in Vermont, I believe, or New Hampshire that simply stated that. If you're an atheist, you can't serve on a jury because, for obvious reasons, right, Norm? You can't be trusted. You can't be trusted, you know. They would be on shaky ground to make you do the oath anyway. They would be on shaky ground. I'm sure it's done all the time, but they're on very shaky ground. Okay. But basically speaking, so far so good, you can be an atheist and everything is okay with that. The government doesn't have a problem with you. You can practice whatever you want. You're cool. All right? That's the freedoms that we all we elevate, we discuss, we give credit for the fact that the religious community in America is so diverse and so huge. It's because of this. Okay, now though, if you are a religious conservative in 2013, religious freedom has a different definition altogether. Okay? It has that. That part's in there. The part that, you know, the basic one, but they've expanded upon this. If you're a religious conservative, the freedom to force one's religious beliefs on the body politic, even if your beliefs are in defiance of the common good, is religious freedom. So they argue constantly, if you deny me my right to discriminate against people on the basis of their religious background, then you're violating my religious freedom. Okay? The right to discriminate, the right to attack. I worked very hard against a bullying bill. I don't know if you heard about this in Michigan last year. Was it last year or the year before? I don't recall. They were trying to pass a law in Lansing that would outlaw bullying in the public schools. Okay? It's a serious problem. I was a teacher. It is a problem worth addressing. They put a clause in there, however, in the first bill as it came out, which said, yeah, effectively, yeah, but you can bully somebody if it's, well, part of your religious beliefs. That there was the religious exemption. That, you know, if my religion claims that gay people are scum, I have the right to bully gay people. Okay? This went in. This went out of committee. This went to the floor. This was passed by the House. This went to the Senate. It got out of committee. It passed on the floor. Fortunately, the governor vetoed it and told him to go back and, you know, do it again. This is a governor who I don't like at all, but he ultimately vetoed it. Okay? This is an example of religious freedom. They argued, you're denying me my right to hate. You're denying me my right to marginalize people. You are denying me my right to, frankly, be obnoxious in the public sphere. Okay? And this is it. Now, they're repeating this over and over and over and over again throughout the media, to the point where I'm afraid a substantial percentage of our less knowledgeable American citizens will come to buy that, to buy into that, just like they bought into America's a Christian nation. Okay? You do know the majority of Americans believe that America is a Christian nation. Okay? If you go back 20 years, they didn't. 20 years ago, no. They wouldn't even get 30%. Now they get 52, 53%, depending on the poll. And that's because the religious right kept pounding away at that. And they're doing the same thing with this. So they're using this beautiful concept of religious liberty, which benefits all, which benefits the common good, has benefited religion substantially, and now they're using it as a weapon for their, not of defense, but a weapon for their aggressive moves. Okay? Very scary. We can talk about that later, because I think this is an incredibly interesting turn of event. All right, so there we go. Those are our terms. They're all relevant for us. Let's get to the meat of the matter here. This is the Greece, New York history, the history of this problem. Now, pre-1999, the town of Greece, which, by the way, is in the Hudson Valley, I don't know, it's maybe yeah, it's near Rochester. It's actually a very pretty town. I've been there. Very pretty little town. Kind of a, postcard-looking place, actually. Okay, pre-1999, and for as long as anyone could remember, town board meetings there were opened with a moment of silent reflection. They were doing what the vast majority of city councils, town boards, county commissioners do. That's what, to this very day, the majority of them do a moment of silence, if they do anything at all. So they were in the mainstream. They were behaving like everyone else. Now, in 1999, a guy named John Auberger was elected town supervisor. And he decided to drop that and replace it with a thing called Chaplain of the Month. Okay, Chaplain of the Month. Now, get this. Chaplains were designated by Auberger. He contacted them. He appointed them. He nominated them. He accepted them. Okay, period, him or his aides on his direction. The chaplains all happened to be Christian pastors or priests. He's a very devout Roman Catholic man, so most of them were priests. The prayers were all, without question, sectarian, okay, by design. He effectively told them, knock yourself out. Whatever you want to do is okay with us. The town board did not promote this program to the general public or to the local clergy, by the way. It's not that they kept it on the down low, they just didn't promote it. You participated in the program if called upon to do so by Auberger or his representatives. That's that. Now, somewhere between 1999 and 2007, two women had business in front of the town board. These women were named Linda Stevens and Susan Galloway. One of them was an atheist. I don't remember which one. I think Galloway was. The other one was a librarian. And they both went to the They both went to the city council board meetings for separate reasons. They didn't know one another. One went because she wanted to talk about a Frisbee park. Another one, I think, to talk about dog ordinances or something. But they went independently. And they both experienced and sat through highly sectarian prayers, which rankled them. Now, one way or the other, they got together. They realized they had a common interest, so they contacted the city to complain about it. They contacted Auberger and said they wanted to discuss this with him. He promptly said, no, you can talk to my aides about this. So they said, okay, I've been given the bum's rush many times, by the town supervisor. Talk to the aides. Sometimes it's productive. It all gets back to him eventually, but, okay, they did it. Now, these aides were incredible, apparently, so unpolitic. These guys must have been lousy. They said to them, well, you've got some choices, okay? One, you don't have to listen to the prayers. Just sit there and be deaf, okay? Then they also said, of course, you can go to the hall while they're praying, which is the famous, that's what got school prayer out, okay? The go to the hall thing. And then the last but not least, they said, you don't have to go to the meetings anymore. If you don't like it, you don't have to go, okay? Period. This is very interesting because, one, they didn't tell them when the prayers were going to be. So in essence, they were just saying, you're not welcome here. I mean, they were right up front about the whole thing, all right? Now, these women they're really heroes of mine, to be honest with you. They decided at that point that what they wanted to do was get irrefutable evidence that these prayers were sectarian. Okay? How do you do it? Do you go to the priest and say, can I have a copy of your prayer? No, none exist. Do you get affidavits from people, that said that? Yeah, but they get written off in the courts as being anecdotal. So A decided to videotape every single town board meeting. They were there at all of them. They went to 124 straight meetings and videotaped them, all right? AU was given all of those videotapes. It must have been remarkable.